Greetings everyone and welcome to today's webinar, How to Choose Risk Assessment Methodology for ISO 9001. Great to have you all here with us. I am Shaun Mehmeti, the Portfolio Marketing Manager for Quality Management System here at PCB and organizer of this webinar. This webinar will be presented by the author of the 9001 Academy. He has an extensive working experience both as an external auditor and as a consultant. In his consulting career, he works with clients from the manufacturing and service providing organization. He has an MSc in mechanical engineering and he is a holder of the following certifications: ISO 9001 Lead Auditor, ISO 14001 Lead Auditor, OHSAS 18001 Lead Auditor, Mr. Strahinja Stojanovic. Please feel free to write your questions and comments in the question box in the right hand control panel, or you can use the raise hand function. We will unmute you and you will have a chance to ask the question directly to Strahinja. All of the other questions will be answered accordingly at the end of the presentation. Please, Mr. Stojanovic, you may continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Shaun. Just to get started, my name is again Strahinja Stojanovic, and I'm the author at 9001 Academy. So today we'll talk about the overview of the risk assessment methodologies that can be used for ISO 9001 in regards to the risk-based thinking. Just to get familiar with the GoToWebinar control panel, by clicking on the orange arrow, you can open and close your control panel. From the view menu, you can select the control panel not to auto-hide when inactive if you prefer to keep it always open. The audio pane will provide you with the information. By default, you can join the webinar via microphone and speakers. By the way, you should close all your internet applications because you may experience problems with the sound webinar. Click Audio Setup to select your computer speaker or headset devices. If you're having troubles with the sound, you can join the audio via telephone by selecting Use Telephone, and the dial-in information will be displayed, including the audio pin. Here is the question pane where you can write your questions during the presentation, and I will answer those, as Shaun said, at the end of the presentation. Just to see if everyone can hear me. If you can hear me, please use your hand raising tool. Okay. I see that most of you can hear me, so I will continue with the presentation. Let's begin. Many people now are worrying about the risk-based thinking and how to apply it, how to evidence it, and of course how to audit it. And just to mention here that this 1 hour webinar is intended for people and companies that have already implemented the ISO 9001-2008 revision and are planning to transition to 2015 revision. Therefore, I won't explain the implementation of the whole standard, just this risk-based thinking. If you want to find out more about the whole QMS implementation process, please take a look at the series of blogs published on our website. And this webinar is intended for people who are responsible for the quality management system in their organization and are familiar with the current version of the standard. So this webinar will explain the risk-based thinking approach, but since the time is limited, I will explain you only the main principles of the risk-based thinking and the risk assessment methodologies. And since we are all about to make the transition to a new version of the standard and apply the risk-based thinking, I have one general advice, and that is the systematic approach will prevent you from failing and will help you develop the most appropriate methodology and process for your organization. Risk-based thinking is something that we do automatically. For example, if I wish to cross a road, I look for traffic before I begin. And I will not step in front of the moving car. And the risk-based thinking has always been in the ISO 9001, but this revision builds it into the whole management system. In ISO 9000, from the beginning and throughout the standard, making preventive action part of the strategic planning as well as operation and review. And by considering risk throughout the organization, the likelihood of achieving stated objectives improve, outputs are more consistent, and the customers can be confident that they will receive the expected product or service. Today we will talk about the risk-based thinking process, how to choose the best technique, and we will go through some basic of the risk assessment tools that I have selected for today's presentation. That is the business impact analysis, fault tree analysis, and failure mode effect analysis. And at the end, we will discuss the main challenges and documenting and evidencing the RBT or risk-based thinking. Before I continue, I will show you the poll, and in this poll you can tell me what would you like this webinar to focus on. So please take a couple of seconds to answer the poll. I hope that you can see the poll, so take a couple of seconds to fill it in. Okay, I can see that the most of you have voted, so I will close the poll in a couple of seconds and share the results with you. Of course, we will focus on the topics that you selected, but we will also cover the remaining topics. So here are the results of the poll. Here you can see it. Most of you are interested in risk-based thinking process and choosing the best technique. So I will basically focus on these two elements of the presentation, but I will also cover the remaining topics as well. Okay, let's continue. So the risk-based thinking should be an ongoing process. It can be done once a year. It cannot be done once a year and considered as effective. The best way to apply it is through the PDCA cycle. That is something that the standard itself recommends. When you are doing it for the first time, it is best to go by the book and really establish the process and go by that process that you determine. First, what you should do is, of course, to define the scope of your risk-based thinking. Since this is the standard focused on customer satisfaction and delivering the quality products or services, you need to include all these processes and issues that affect those two. Well-defined scope will prevent you from going too wide with your assessment and will keep you on the right path. If the scope is badly defined, no methodology or risk assessment tool will provide you with a good results. One of the things that I noticed so far with this new version of the standard and implementations are basically the problem of defining the scope of not only the risk-based thinking process, but also defining the context of the organization. So many companies have problems to find out what you need to include in this assessment. So basically, all the things or issues that you are considered regarding the risk-based thinking should be your focus should be on your processes, on the quality of your products and services, and on the customer satisfaction. You can, of course, expand the scope on wider parts of your company and other issues, but keep in mind that the point of this risk-based thinking and the requirements regarding the addressing risks and opportunities is basically on the quality of the product and services and customer satisfaction. Since we are still in the plan phase, the next step is to select the appropriate methodology. There are really a lot of methodologies available, and there is no single methodology that will fit all organizations. Advice is to do a little research and select the methodology according to criteria that you find appropriate. Basically, this is why we did this webinar, is just to show an overview of different risk assessment methodologies that you can compare and really see what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and how they can be useful for your organization. In nowadays, and as I can see on the internet and in the forums, people are mostly talking about the FMEA as the best risk assessment methodology, but again, this is also a methodology that has its own strengths and weaknesses, and it's not always applicable. The next step, of course, is to conduct the risk assessment, and the best way is to include the relevant people from your organization and get the more information and data needed for the assessment. Once you identify the unacceptable risks, you need to create the plan for a mitigation of those risks. This can be done in some way, in the same way that you perform the preventive actions in the previous version of the standard, or you can develop some new, let's say, approach in mitigating the risk. What it requires is to take actions to address risks and opportunities, and those actions should be, of course, planned, and you need to define the responsibilities, to define the deadline, needed resources, and of course what needs to be done to mitigate the risk. And at the end, you need to do a follow-up to determine whether the actions for risk mitigation were effective, and does this risk assessment methodology or scope should be altered. If there is a need for further action, you need to initiate the corrective actions. As I said before, for people who are just getting familiar with risk-based thinking or risk assessment methodologies, there is a good chance that you wouldn't made it at the first time. So you will probably need to change your methodology or to adapt it even more to your needs, and also the same is for the scope. So after you conduct the first risk assessment, when you adopt your methodology and you conduct the assessment and take actions to address those risks and opportunities, it's very important to do a follow-up to see whether those actions really take some effect, and do you need to change something to, let's say, increase the effectiveness of your risk-based thinking process. Okay, as I said before, there is no one method to fit all organizations. The context of your organization will have the major influence in selection of the risk-based thinking technique. First thing is the size of organization and the type of product or service you deliver to the customer. If you have some small organization, you wouldn't have to use some extensive technique. You can decide to use a SWOT analysis or simple brainstorming. For example, if you decide to do it through brainstorming, you can arrange relevant employees to discuss the risks and opportunities in each department, and the minutes from that meeting can be an evidence that you have performed the risk-based thinking. Then the type and the range of risks in your organization will have the great influence on selecting the RBT technique. If your product affects a great number of clients and can potentially have big consequences on clients, you will need to do a risk assessment in more details. For example, in food production industry, people are already familiar with the hazard analysis and critical control points, or HACCP, which is basically the risk assessment tool that is used for mainly in the food industry. The technique can be used, the same technique of course can be used in the QMS. You only need to adjust the decision tree and apply it to all your processes that affect quality product and the customer satisfaction. Another thing that needs to be considered during the selection of the availability of information and data. The more profound information will allow you to do more complex assessments. It would be bad if you choose the method that requires information that you don't have. When deciding on the method for risk assessment, find out what information are needed for the methodology to work. I would suggest some simpler methodology for beginning, and later when you start gathering information and data, you can switch to some more complex methodology. And finally, you also need to consider legal and contractual requirements. For example, in some countries, the hazard analysis and critical control points is mandatory for the food industry regarding the food safety. So in a lot of industries, for example, in the industry involved with the medical device, they are obliged to use, for example, FMEA as a part of their medical device management system. So this is also something that needs to be taken into account when deciding on the methodology for risk assessment. Before I continue with my further presentation, I will again like to show you one poll, and here I would like to find out what are your opinion on the new version of the standard, and how much effort is needed to implement the risk-based thinking. So please, again, take a couple of seconds to fill in the answers. Okay, I can see that the most of you have voted, so I will close the poll now and share the results. Okay, let's see. So it's basically a tie between some effort and the need for some training. Well, I think that the implementation of this new requirement of the standard in existing management systems will definitely need some effort. So, and it will mostly depend whether you need the training or not, will depend mostly on what kind of technique that you chosen and the complexity of your products, services, and things like that. So I think that definitely some effort will be needed in research, and the good material for selection of the technique would be the ISO 31010, which includes, I think, more than 20 risk assessment methodologies with not too much details, but enough detailed explanations of how they work, then of course strengths, limitations, and things like that. So some research and some effort will be needed, but in case of small and mid-sized companies, maybe this can be enough and you wouldn't need to go to some additional trainings regarding the risk management and things like that, because the standard itself says that it's risk-based thinking or addressing risks and opportunities. It's not really a risk management. So although those kind of trainings can be beneficial for the companies and the people who assess the risks and things like that, I think it's not really a crucial thing. And by getting into it, into research and getting knowledge about the risk assessment techniques, I think that most of the people in most of the companies, especially in small ones, will be able to do it by themselves. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. So the first technique that I want to show you today is the business impact analysis. And this technique is used to determine how key disruption risk can affect the organization's operations, and identifies and quantifies the capabilities that would be needed to manage it. The BIA helps you understand the identification and criticality of key business processes, functions, and associated resources, and the key interdependencies that exist in the organization. It also shows how disruptive events will affect the capacity and capability of achieving critical business objectives. The BIA can be undertaken using questionnaires, interviews, structured workshops, or a combination of all three. To obtain an understanding of the critical processes, the effects of the loss of those processes, and the required recovery timeframes and supporting resources. The key steps include the following. So based on the risks and vulnerability assessment, identify the key processes and outputs of the organization and determine the criticality of the processes. Then the determination of consequences of disruption on the identified critical processes over defined periods. The next step is to identify the interdependencies with key internal and external stakeholders, and this can include the mapping the nature of the interdependencies throughout the supply chain. Then the identification of alternative workarounds and processes currently in use or planned to be developed. Next, you need to determine the maximum acceptable outage time for each process based on the identified consequences and the critical success factors for the MIO, or maximum outage time, represents the maximum period of time the organization can tolerate the loss of capability. Once the MIO is determined, you need to determine the recovery time objectives, or RTO, for any specialized equipment or technology. The RTO represents the time which the organization aims to recover the equipment or process. And of course, at the end, you need to review the periodically the level of preparedness of your organization. The good thing with BIA is that it gives an understanding of the critical processes that provide organization with the ability to continue to achieve their stated objectives, and understanding of required results, as well as an opportunity to redefine the operational processes of the organization and to assist in the resilience of the organization. The downside is that it's simplistic or oversimplistic expectation of recovery requirements and difficulty to obtain an adequate level of understanding of organizations' operations and activities. The fault tree analysis is a technique for identifying and analyzing factors that can contribute to the specified undesired effects, which is also called the top event. The factors identified in the tree can be events that are associated with component hardware failure, human errors, or any other pertinent which leads to undesired event. A full tree may be used qualitatively by potential causes and pathways to a failure, or quantitatively to calculate the probability of the top event, given knowledge of the probabilities of casual events. It may be used at the design stage of a system to identify the potential causes of failure and hence to select between different design options, or used at the operation phase to identify how major failures can occur. It can also be used to analyze a failure which has occurred, to display graphically how different events came together to cause the failure. I will show you now in this simple example how the fault tree analysis is conducted. Our case study is some organization that has decided to implement the ISO 9001 by itself and get the certificates. First, you need to define the top event to be analyzed. This may be the failure or a broader outcome of that failure. In our case, it's failing the certification audit. The next step is to identify the possible immediate causes of failure modes leading to the top event. The things that can lead to a failing in certification audits are the major nonconformities that can be caused by absence of the mandatory documented information or when employees are not following the prescribed procedures. The further analysis of undesirable system operation is followed until the further analysis becomes unproductive. Events and causes at lowest system level are known as the base events. In our case, the cause of absence of mandatory documented information is insufficient understanding of requirements of the standard, while the reasons for not following the procedures by employees can be the lack of awareness of employees, absence of the procedure from the place of application, or procedures are too voluminous and vague and employees are having difficulty to understand them. The last cause is marked with a rectangle, which symbolizes events that needs further analysis. Where probabilities can be assigned to base events, the probability of top event can be calculated and make this quantitative analysis. The output of this analysis is pictorial representation of how this event can occur with probability of the top event. The FTA affords a disciplined approach which is highly systematic and focuses attention on these effects of failure which are directly related to the top event. It is useful for analyzing the system with many interfaces and interactions, and the pictorial representation leads to an easy understanding of the system behavior and the factors included. The problem is that except in the simple fault trees, a software package is needed to ensure the consistency, correctness, and verifiability. In some cases, the causal events are not bound together, and it can be difficult to ascertain whether all important pathways to the top event are included. And the last methodology for today is, of course, the FMEA, which is the, as I said before, the most popular methodology for risk assessment. FMEA is basically a technique used to identify the ways in which components, systems, or processes can fail to fulfill their design intent. There are several applications of FMEA in design, system, processes, service, and the software. The FMEA can be applied during the design, manufacture, or operation of the physical system. It can also be applied in procedures and processes. For example, it is used to identify potential for medical error in healthcare systems and failures in maintenance procedures. The first step in the application of FMEA is to identify all potential failure modes of various parts of the system. Failure mode is what is observed to fail incorrectly. In order to perform this step correctly, you need information about the elements of the system in sufficient detail for meaningful analysis. And information may include drawings or flowcharts of the system being analyzed and its components or the steps of the process. Also, historical information on failures can be very useful if they are available. While identifying all the failure modes, you should also determine the level of detection or how easy it is to detect the failure. For example, leakage of the underground tank can be very hard to detect. The next step is to determine the severity of consequences caused by the failure mode. Again, in this step, you will need a full understanding of the system or processes being analyzed, or engagement with people with sufficient knowledge about it. The effect of failure mode should be expressed through the severity level. The third step is to determine the cause of each failure mode. For every component or activity identified, you need to determine how can each part conceivably fail and what mechanism might produce this mode of failure. Just like in determining the cause of nonconformity, you need to discover the root cause of each failure mode. And depending on the probability of root cause to occur, you need to define the occurrence level. Once you determine the detection, severity, and occurrence, you can multiply them and discover the risk priority number, or RPN. RPN is a semi-quantitative measure. This method is used most often in quality assurance applications. So depending on the scale for acceptance of risk levels, your risk will be either acceptable or unacceptable. And all unacceptable risk must be mitigated and decreased to acceptable level. Also, what differentiates this methodology from others is that beside this, you will also have the rank in priorities when dealing with the risks or failure modes. So once you define the priority of the risks or the failure modes, you will need to take actions to mitigate the risks. And once the actions are carried out, there should be a follow-up to ensure that the actions were effective, and it can be done by reassessing the whole system with FMEA. The FMEA is widely applicable for human, equipment, and system failure modes, and to hardware, software, and procedures, and it can avoid the need for costly equipment modification by identifying problems in design phase, identify single point of failure modes and requirements for redundancy or safety system, and provide input to development monitoring programs by highlighting key features to be monitored. The problem is that it can only be used to identify single failure modes and not combination of the failure modes. And unless adequately controlled and focused, the studies can be time-consuming and costly. It can also be tedious for complex multi-layer systems. Regarding the documentation, the standard actually does not require you to document the risk-based thinking. It is completely up to you, but it will depend on the technique you have chosen for application of the risk-based thinking. In some cases, a small organization will probably demonstrate its risk-based thinking during the interview when the auditor asks you about the risks in industry and in your organization and how you deal with them. In case of the bigger company, you will probably choose some more complex technique, and it will require procedure to explain how you apply it along the necessary records. Now for this presentation, I would like to show you one model of the document for applying the fault tree or FMEA risk assessment. So you can see this is basically the regular type of document that you can receive on our website. So all you need to do is to define all the things that is first the scope and the users of the procedure and where it will be applied. Of course, there are some regular steps that you need to conduct, from appointing the team, then gathering inputs for the assessment, then defining the ranking criteria. The ranking criteria for the FMEA is usually from 1 to 10 for each of the criteria. So that is how these procedures for FMEA usually look like. And once you determine all the criteria, the ranking and everything, you can start conducting the FMEA from identifying the process or production phases or components that needs to be assessed, to identifying potential failure modes, then potential failure effect, cause, and at the end the controls or fault detection. And of course, at the end you will need to determine the risk priority number and then take some actions to address them. Okay, we'll go back to the presentation. At the end, of course, I would like to hear your opinion and what do you think are the main challenges for implementation of the risk-based thinking. So please take a couple of seconds again and fill in the poll. Okay, I see that most of you have voted, so I will close the poll now and show you the results. So here are the results. I hope you can see them. Okay, so the most of you think that conducting a risk assessment is the hardest part of the entire risk-based process or concept, whatever you want to call it. Actually, I'm not fully agree with this. Maybe the activities included in conducting the risk assessment are the most, let's say, boring, or they take the most of the time. But I think the main point is to really choose the risk assessment technique that is really appropriate to your company, to your type of business. And once you determine the risk assessment technique and you define how the risk assessment will be done, the activities in conducting the risk assessment will be much easier and simple. And basically, this will help you to get the real and useful results. So if you a mistake in choosing the risk assessment technique, you can end up either to have some technique that you cannot feed with enough information, or it's too complicated for use, or at the end it can be oversimplistic and doesn't really provide you with the useful results, and you didn't manage to identify the risks in your company. So I think that the main step and the most important thing is to really choose the good risk assessment technique and go by that technique. And the end of the year, or once you audit and review your entire management system, you can make decision whether this technique was really useful to you, or you can improve it or even change the entire technique. Also, people are also wondering a lot about the auditing of risk-based thinking and the provision of evidence to the certification body or internal auditor that you have conducted the risk-based thinking. As I said before, the best evidence, of course, is to have some kind of a record about the assessment, about the results of the actions taken to address risk-based thinking. And those records doesn't have to be, let's say, some new kind of record, some new forms and things like that. Basically, if you, for example, identify as a risk that you have bad or outdated equipment in your facility, the action to address this risk is to increase the frequency of servicing the equipment or checking the equipment or something like that. So it can be done in different ways. It doesn't have to. You don't have to have some risk action report or something like that. But of course, you can if you find that approach suitable to your company and your needs. And at the end, by taking the risk-based approach, an organization becomes proactive rather than purely reactive, preventing or reducing undesired effects and promoting continual improvement. The preventive actions are automatic when the management system is risk-based. And the risk is understood to be negative, and in risk-based thinking, opportunities can also be found, and this is sometimes seen as a positive side of the risks. Okay, before we begin the question and answer session, just to mention that you can also ask me anything about the ISO 9001 directly. Just send me an email and I will answer as quick as I can. To leave before the Q&A session is over, please do fill in the short survey that will open right after you leave the webinar. Okay, that is basically it. We can start with the questions.
Okay, Strahinja, thank you very much for this great presentation. Now we will take the time and answer some of the attendees' questions. Okay, then the first question is, one question is written like this: risk-based thinking is not defined in ISO 9001-2015. So what is its definition?
Well, I think that that's the main reason why they didn't want to include the definition in the standard, because it's probably too broad. The risk-based thinking is the approach or a way of thinking that is based on the risks, or proactive approach to resolving problems. So I think that this is the most simplest explanation.
Okay, then it's another question, and probably it's going to be the last for today because there are so many questions written here, and due to the time limited, I will read this one. How risk is assessed at the grassroots level in daily jobs?
It can be done in various ways. For example, you can use some of the methodologies that I presented today. For example, the FMEA can be very good for things like that, to identify what can go wrong in the everyday activities, and to take some actions to avoid those risks in the processes or activities. And the risk assessment cannot be done every day, so you will have to pick a part of the year when you will sit or gather a team for risk assessment in your company and conduct the risk assessment. The effects of the actions taken to address the risks and opportunities is usually 1 year, or can be 6 months. It will depend on the type of the action that you have taken to mitigate the risks. So it cannot be considered as an everyday day job.
So, okay then, Strahinja, thank you very much for this explanation and for your presentation. Because of the time limited, we will have to conclude the presentation. However, if you have any other questions, you can send your question through email and we will answer them individually. Thank you again, Strahinja, for this clear and informative presentation. I want to thank all the attendees as well for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. We hope you enjoyed the webinar. To keep up with our webinars, please check our PCB webinars and also our social media. Since next week, we are organizing webinars on interesting topics. Next Tuesday, we are hosting a webinar on the topic how to determine the root cause analysis technique in a management system. Thank you, Mr. Strahinja, for this informative presentation. Goodbye.
Thank you, Sean. Bye.